When the World Wide Web first emerged in the early 1990s, it served as an advanced portal to a boundless, decentralized world. And boy did it show. Within this domain of lawless and unpredictable information came a complete lack of structure, hierarchy, or even a sense of online decorum. Many people knew what the internet was capable of, but they didn't know where to start on it. They just knew that the information they wanted was out there, waiting to be discovered, if it even ever will be. But early innovators on the internet knew that this was becoming a problem, and that it needed to be addressed quickly. The solution would present itself in the form of a new website that would soon be known as Yahoo. And now, anyone who was brand new to the internet had a jumping-off point, a web indexer that served as a digital guide that gave them a sense of direction based on category. And best of all, it was fun about it. The internet itself was now more interconnected than ever before, unlike its sporadic, jumbled beginnings. Naturally, Yahoo was a massive hit, the king of online navigation in the 90s. At its peak, Yahoo was worth $125 billion, more than Disney, Viacom, and News Corp combined. And the company was only 5 years old. But not too long after, everything would come tumbling down. Now, Yahoo still exists, but in a very different form than in its prime. For many, Yahoo now serves more as a distant memory than as a daily driver of online information. The numbers even show it. By 2016, Yahoo was valued at around $4.8 billion, around 96% less than it once was. So what happened? How did Yahoo experience such a hard fall from grace, while other companies of the time, such as Google, prospered? Moreover, Yahoo was not the first website indexer, so what made it stand out among its competitors to eventually rule the internet? This is the innovative, strange, and tragic story of Yahoo.
Did you know that you can play games on the net? That's right, and it's never been easier. So easy that you can even play it on your cellular device. Millennium is looking stellar, man. But why live in the future when you could live in the past with all the heroes of history? It is a city building and hero collection game, allowing you to build your own civilization starting in the Stone Age and advancing in technology as you go. Wow! As someone who loves being a control freak and telling everyone what to do, I just get so much joy moving around my little minions and having them build me farms, expand territory, and even research me new technologies. And as you're building your own world, you can even get help from time-traveling companions, such as Tesla and Einstein. I was gonna tell you a time travel joke, but you guys didn't like it. And you can activate your own 4-star hero by earning 40,000 gems or around 10 hours of gameplay. And you can also receive one if you choose to purchase the starter pack. And you can even play with other people over high-speed lines with the Heroes of History's PvP fights. These are available from the Minoan era, with PvP seasons lasting around a week and even allowing you to challenge your personal best in rankings. Sounds all that in a bag of chips. Sign me up! Well, it just so happens that you can in fact sign up today. Use my link on the screen and enter my promo code to unlock your first 5-star hero. That's right, 5 stars. This is an option only available for new players. Come on, man. Time's ticking. You gotta do it before the 2000 switch sets all our clocks back to 0. Einstein and Tesla can't help you with that. So go ahead and join me in Heroes of History.
In the early 90s, there were several ways of browsing the internet. This could be done through Usenet bulletin boards, a protocol known as Gopher, walled gardens like AOL and Prodigy, and a new, growing internet technology known as the World Wide Web. Because of course, the internet is just an interconnected network of computers all around the world that communicate with each other under the same protocol. There are several ways of expressing this communication to the average user, but the World Wide Web was gaining a lot of popularity because of how easy it was to use. Not only that, it was democratic about doing it. Rather than having to work with an often confusing text-based system, Users could now communicate online through hyperlinks, bright colors, and eventually, even images. You effectively had the user-friendliness of these walled gardens mixed with the decentralization of these more advanced environments. You had the World Wide Web. Of course, the World Wide Web and these other platforms would still comfortably coexist over the next few years, but the World Wide Web was gaining a lot of traction. But there was one glaring problem with it. The web was disorganized. The information was there, but it was so spread out that there wasn't exactly a cohesive, straightforward way of getting to it. Imagine a city filled with some of the most incredible buildings and resources in the world, but there wasn't any roads. Instead, you just kinda had to find everything on your own. That was the World Wide Web at this time. If you knew of a certain website that provided a very specific type of content or service, chances are it was because you were either told about it, found it on a web ring, or indirectly stumbled across it after hours of late-night surfing. But what if you could make a page that indexed other pages that people discovered? Basically, a website of websites. If a page was deemed useful enough, it would be included in this index, which was divided up into categories such as entertainment, news, art, business, and so on. So David Philo and Jerry Yang came up with an idea. Philo had met Yang in 1989 at Stanford University after disputing a B that Yang gave him on his midterm, as he was a teacher's assistant at the time. They quickly became friends, and upon returning from an academic trip to Japan, became obsessed with a relatively new computer program known as Mosaic. It was the very first truly popular web browser, allowing you to navigate websites within an easy click and drag environment. But of course, they too were frustrated at this lack of organization. Their new idea was to build all the roads that connected the World Wide Web. So they got to work. This website would be designed in the form of a hierarchy system. You had the main, basic website categories, which were then further divided into subcategories. Anytime Philo or Yang found a website that they deemed useful and worthy enough for their page, they would index it into one of these subcategories in the form of a hyperlink. They eventually did this over 2,000 times. They called this impressive curation of web pages Jerry's Guide to the World Wide Web, as Philo initially didn't want his name on it. And through Yang's workstation, you could now access this new website by simply typing in akebono.stanford.edu. The site was an instant success, as at this same time, the number of new users joining the internet was growing at a rapid rate, meaning more people who had the chance to discover Jerry's Guide. But this website name is a bit long and forgettable. Philo and Yang decided that they wanted to make something catchier. They particularly liked the names of the rude, filthy, human-like creatures from Gulliver's Travels, which were called the Yahoos. Of course, this story was already well into the public domain by the 1990s, so that's what they called the website, Yahoo. But they also added an exclamation point to it, both as a marketing tactic to make their name slightly more unique, and also to add a tone of excitement to it, because it could also be read as Yahoo! I'm just so excited that I get to be on Yahoo! You know, they also jokingly made it into a backronym, an acronym that's created after the fact, stating that it stood for yet another hierarchical officious oracle. And so, by March of 1994, up to 50,000 people per day were going on akebono.stanford.edu/Yahoo to deep dive into the World Wide Web. By January of 1995, it then just became yahoo.com. For Philo and Yang, this project became an obsession, to the point where they were prioritizing it over completing their college dissertation. In fact, their dissertation advisor was quite surprised when she returned from her trip to Europe to learn that Philo and Yang's trailer was now the center of one of the most popular websites in the world. But that raises a question. Why Yahoo specifically? Yes, the web was disorganized before the site's inception, but Yahoo was not the first web indexer. In fact, it was becoming pretty standard for many websites to include things called web rings. These were pages that basically curated lists of other pages based on category. For example, the Beach Boys themed web ring would give you a large list of Beach Boys related websites, which you could easily just click on through a hyperlink. You didn't need to memorize every Beach Boys website, you just needed to know the address to the web ring. Additionally, there were services like Archie and JumpStation, which were designed to help you find certain things online through search. In theory, this would kind of make a web indexer irrelevant, as anyone could just search for the web page they are looking for and find it right away. When you put it that way, Yahoo doesn't exactly sound all that special, right? Well, it does seem that way, but this explanation with the web wings and search engines isn't exactly telling the full story. Yes, web rings were a thing, and continued to be a thing, but they were not exactly known to be reliable. They were often put together by amateur users who weren't really web professionals and were effectively just creating a fan website for a certain subject. As a result, these web rings were often clunky, unmaintained, and even riddled with broken links. They became less useful over time. Yahoo, on the other hand, consistently maintained its index to make sure that all links were operational as well as relevant. They also made sure that the websites in question were high quality enough to be deemed worthy to take up real estate on Yahoo's page. On top of that, it was fun and exciting and felt personally crafted to be a fun place. The search engine Archie was innovative in that it was one of the first of its kind, but you could only use it to search for files, not web pages, making it a bit of an irrelevant comparison to Yahoo. Now, JumpStation was in fact a search engine that specifically found web pages through keywords, but its technology quickly became archaic once Yahoo came around, even shutting down entirely less than a year after. This is because JumpStation relied on a linear search engine, and the ones which emerged shortly after, like WebCrawler and AltaVista, used a ranking system, making search results much more relevant. So JumpStation quickly died out. And also, these platforms were a bit more technical and weren't exactly designed right away for Yahoo's target audience, which was people who were going on the web for the very first time. Heck, people who were going on a computer for the very first time. They are a bit less likely to start searching for things right away because they're not exactly going to know what to search for. In this respect, it is a bit like comparing apples to oranges, and further shows just how unique Yahoo was for its time. And with what we just mentioned about the rapid user growth that the internet was experiencing, Yahoo couldn't have come at a better time. But it wasn't just this. There was one decision that Yahoo made that was so brilliant, you could make the argument that it was the thing that would make them dominate the web. Their collaboration with a new web browser known as Netscape Navigator. Now, I've talked about Netscape in great detail in the past, but the long and short is that Mosaic was now becoming quite outdated, and Netscape served as its replacement. Right before its launch, Yahoo and Netscape formed a partnership, which allowed for Yahoo to essentially be bookmarked into the browser under a button called Net Directory. This meant that someone who was using the World Wide Web for the very first time just had to open Netscape, click this button, and now they were on Yahoo, ready to explore thousands of websites that they just discovered all at once. Netscape would quickly become the web browser that would dominate the 90s, trickling its success down to Yahoo, which would then become the portal to the World Wide Web. Rest in peace, Comet. And so, Yahoo was now a household name, especially since they were now even creating iconic ads on TV. It was hard to escape even away from the computer screen.
Do you, Yahoo?
And much like how they were attentive to their web indexes, Yahoo was also attentive to the internet's constantly changing technology. In 1995, Yahoo would introduce to its homepage Yahoo Search. As this was during a time where web crawling was starting to emerge, it only made sense for Yahoo to jump on the bandwagon as well. However, Yahoo search initially looked only for keywords across its own site, rather than the entire World Wide Web. This meant that if the site you were looking for wasn't in Yahoo's index, it wasn't going to come up on a Yahoo search result. Was it the best search engine on the web? No, but it made the best portal on the web now so much easier to use. By 1996, Yahoo was only skyrocketing in popularity, allowing them to officially go public in April of that same year, with its value reaching $848 million on its first day. It was one of many online company evaluations to snowball the dot-com bubble, something which would later contribute to its demise. Being a free website, going public was not the only thing that made Yahoo money. It also made its income from banner ads, where companies would, of course, pay them to advertise their product on the homepage. This capital allowed Yahoo to then get involved in other business ventures, which would eventually make them even more money. Examples of this would include their acquisition of GeoCities. They kept the service free, but added premium plans to it, like GeoCities Plus, which would allow for website owners to get better bandwidth and features if they paid for it. They also started Yahoo Store, which allowed for users to create their own online stores to sell products and services. And of course, arguably one of the most controversial sources of income they had was through something they called express consideration. By the time Yahoo got so big it no longer became practical to have two guys manually adding sites to it, they gave web owners the option to submit their website for review. If Yahoo deemed it worthy enough, it would be indexed and categorized as necessary. But as you could have guessed, tons of people were making submissions, meaning that the review team was gonna fall behind, and some people may have to wait a very long time to get an answer, if they even got one at all. In 1999, some people would end up waiting longer for an answer than others, those who didn't pay. With express consideration, you essentially bought a fast pass, which not only guaranteed that your site would be reviewed, but that it would be done quicker than if you hadn't paid. It didn't guarantee that you'd be accepted, just that your site would be looked at. Then, Yahoo's decision to mirror AOL by creating their own Yahoo Messenger and Yahoo Mail services only made their brand more attractive, which got them even more users, which made them even more money. Now you might be thinking to yourself, what about AOL? Before Yahoo even existed, its platform already looked quite similar. Why didn't they become Yahoo instead? Especially since they were first. Well, like we mentioned at the beginning, at the start of the 90s, AOL was a walled garden. This meant that while it was on the internet, it wasn't technically connected to the World Wide Web. It was its own separate thing. These cool buttons and pages on AOL only took you to other pages on AOL, whereas Yahoo indexed the World Wide Web. It indexed everybody. AOL would officially start supporting the World Wide Web in 1995 with its acquisition of a web browser called Booklink, but at that time, Yahoo was already very popular. But still, AOL did start to become a legitimate competitor. In fact, it was significantly larger than Yahoo even was, simply based on the fact that they were already an internet service provider. However, this part of AOL was already so attractive to people at the time that AOL's other services were more supplementary, rather than a full-on replacement of Yahoo. And so the two still coexisted quite comfortably, until they didn't. 1999 was a very good year for Yahoo. This was when their value reached its peak, and when they began acquiring online companies left and right, most notably acquiring Broadcast.com for $5 billion. Another website would also make an offer to Yahoo for only $1 million. This website was called Google, which Yahoo rejected because they felt their search engine wasn't particularly that special, and they wanted to keep their focus on web indexing and keeping users within the Yahoo ecosystem, despite buying Broadcast.com. Yeah, as you could see, there was a bit of marketing myopia starting to form. Although they were still popular, Yahoo wasn't yet aware that they were beginning to not properly value their acquisitions and offers. This problem would manifest in the form of the dot-com bubble burst in 2001, a situation that would be exacerbated by their ownership of Broadcast.com, which was one of the quintessential dot-com bubble victims. In other words, turns out that most of these websites, including Yahoo, were not worth nearly as much as everyone thought they were. Yahoo ended up losing 93% of its value because of this. They would survive, but the growing popularity of Google would hold them back. By this time, people were already familiar enough with the World Wide Web, where a web indexer was no longer as vital to their daily online lives. Instead, a more minimalist, straightforward, and better search engine was much more palatable. It wasn't long before Google would take over in search, the company Yahoo initially rejected. They would try to buy Google again for around $3 billion, which Google then turned down because it was too low. In fact, this inability to properly evaluate other companies would ultimately take them down. Yahoo would go on to purchase so many more companies that would just end up failing, making them lose a ton of their capital over time. This would include their acquisition of GeoCities. Although initially a bit of a success, the service would eventually end up going under in 2009. They also acquired Flickr and Tumblr, and frankly, not a whole lot of people use those websites anymore. This also coincided with the fact that Yahoo was also constantly changing CEOs, meaning that they could not maintain a consistent vision for the company. All of these things would work together to contribute to Yahoo's decline. But of course, it didn't happen overnight. In fact, Yahoo's revenue peaked in 2008, which was 6 years after things started going south for them. But once again, this is not telling the full story. Yahoo still had a lot of traffic, but mostly legacy traffic. In other words, Yahoo at this time was doing a great job at cohesion, but not innovation, which is ultimately what investors care about in the long term. Because they couldn't see much innovation popping up in Yahoo's future, investors gave it lower evaluations, despite its income otherwise increasing. But then you have the 2008 recession. Many companies are now struggling, which means that they can't invest as much money into advertising. This meant that now tons of companies were pulling out of advertising on Yahoo. And by the time the economy did recover, most advertisers didn't return because there were now better alternatives. Again, Yahoo still exists today, but it now remains as a shadow of its former self, acting more as your typical online entertainment and news outlet as opposed to being the internet empire of its past. The company was eventually acquired by Verizon in 2016 for $4.8 billion. Ironically, this acquisition would result in Yahoo and AOL now being owned by the same company, despite initially being competitors. Both companies were acquired again by Apollo Global Management in 2021 for $5 billion. Yahoo's entire story serves as a cautionary tale that even the most powerful and influential can still fall short if they don't continuously innovate and properly combat the forces which are beyond their control. If you would like to learn more about the internet and strange tales of the 90s, you can find my video about that right here, as well as related videos down below. A special thanks to my Patreon supporters. Check out patreon.com/NationSquid. I am also sending out holiday cards to my top tier. Get one while you still can. You can always buy me a copy too. Thank you for watching, everyone.